Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, another in my series of what I call American Steel. This is where we put the spotlight on some 80s underground American metal bands that you need to check out. And the band we're going to be talking about today is one of the biggies of underground metal. You know, when you're first getting into metal, you're listening to Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and all that stuff. And then when you start digging below the surface, this is one of the bands that people quickly discover because they are just awesome, and it's Cirith Ungol. And we are going to be discussing their 1984 album, King of the Dead, and their 1986 album, One Foot in Hell. I had a chance to just see Cirith Ungol live a couple weeks ago in Houston at the Hell's Hero Festival, and they were just awesome. Never thought I would get a chance to see Cirith Ungol live. The sound of Cirith Ungol is what I would describe as epic metal. They deal with sword and sorcery and fantasy type imagery. In the back here, and you can see on the back here, you know, very traditional metal. I would say it also has some doom elements to it. I would say that especially on the second one here, King of the Dead. In my opinion, these are my two favorites from them, King of the Dead and One Foot in Hell. So they have sort of this kind of a mixture of doom but yet it's sort of epic and just, you know, fist in the air, raise your sword, get ready to go into battle type of thing. Now the lineup is the same for both albums. We have Tim Baker on vocals, and he has a very unique voice. He has this high, raspy voice where he's like almost always in his upper range, and he doesn't sing like kind of traditional like up and down a scale type of melodies. He's kind of like just shouting these lines out, and he'll just sort of accent and punctuate things by just sort of jumping up even a little bit higher, but he has this super intense, really powerful voice. Jerry Fogel on guitars, Michael Vuhia on bass, sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, and Robert Garvan on drums. Now the lineup is the same on both these records. This is King of the Dead is their second album. Their first album, Frost and Fire, had Greg Lindstrom on guitar, and some of the songs on King of the Dead, and I'm not sure about One Foot in Hell, but I know King of the Dead, some of the songs have writing credits and co-writing credits with Greg Lindstrom. King of the Dead is probably, out of these two, if you force me to pick, I'd probably go with King of the Dead. I really like the guitar and bass sound on this album. The guitar has a very unique, distorted sound, and especially when he plays leads, it has this it almost sounds like there's two notes going on at the same time. It's just a very jumps out at the speakers at just kind of a bright tone, but the rhythm tone is really excellent, and the bass it sounds like there's almost like an effect on the bass. The whole time the bass is very upfront and very powerful in the mix, and it fills up and fills up a lot of the sonic space and everything. So I think it's just really cool. I always love the bass sound on King of the Dead and the guitar sound. Some of my favorite songs on King of the Dead are Atom Smasher, Black Machine, and Master of the Pit. These are all, they have like these sort of slow, you just want to put your studded wristbanded fist in the air and get along with it. They played a bunch of these songs live when I saw them, and they just have big, huge riffs. His vocals up high, just, you know, it's sort of the definition of epic metal for me in a lot of ways. Finger of Scorn, Toccata in Fugue. This is that famous Bach piece where they play it on guitar and bass. He plays, you know, the melody lines, the classical-like lines on his guitar. It should be noted, too, I really like the guitar solos on these records because even though he can shred and stuff, they're very melodic and almost like a neoclassical, melodic classical sense to a lot of the lead lines, which I think is really cool. And the final song on King of the Dead, which is probably my favorite song from them, is their namesake song, Cirith Ungol. It is just so cool. There's a line in there where he does this thing, Cirith Ungol, Tower of Fire, fire, and it just repeats that word over and over, like in a delay thing. I just think that's so absolutely cool. For those who don't know Cirith Ungol, it was a mountain pass, I believe, in the Lord of the Rings book, right? This is just textbook if you're in an epic heavy metal band or power metal band, you know, to take a name from something from Lord of the Rings, you know, the ultimate fantasy novel for these fantasy sword and sorcery metal bands. All right, now One Foot in Hell. King of the Dead came out on Enigma Records, and it was produced by the band. And I think it sounds great. It's a very simple mix, but it's very just sort of unique sounding in the way all the instruments sort of go together. Now, One Foot in Hell came out in '86, and this was produced by Brian Slagle, who's the owner of Metal Blade Records. That's the label that this came out on, and the band. Now, I don't know how much that affected it, because I actually don't like the mix as much on One Foot in Hell. I feel like the bass gets a little bit, it isn't as present as it is on King of the Dead, and I think the guitar loses some of its tone also. But it's still really cool. I would say One Foot in Hell has some more faster numbers on it, whereas King of the Dead is just, there's a lot of like sort of mid-tempo and slow, heavy, epic things, which is fine by me. I love that. One Foot in Hell picks up the speed a little bit on some of the songs, like for instance the opening track, Blood and Iron, has kind of like an Iron Maiden style gallop to it. Chaos Descends is super cool. That has again this sort of doomy feel. Nad Sokor is sort of a more up-tempo one, and then another one that I really like on here is Doomed Planet. We're living on a doomed planet. Just really cool. So if you've never heard of Cirith Ungol and you're wanting to explore more underground 80s stuff, I highly, highly recommend that you check out these two albums. It is just fantastic, epic metal with these fantasy lyrics. You know, it's going to make you want to storm a castle or something after you listen to this. You can just picture yourself in a Tolkien fantasy scenario theme or something, you know, after listening to these records. So I just love them. They were awesome live. They sounded fantastic. So if you have a chance, check out Cirith Ungol, King of the Dead, and One Foot in Hell. If you are familiar with Cirith Ungol, let me know what you guys think of them down below. Let me know what you think of these two albums. All right, and until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.